আমরা কিভাবে ইজিলি করে কাজ করতে পারি, এবং হচ্ছে আমরা আজকে শিখবো অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমাদের ডেটা প্ল্যাটফর্মে আমরা আরো কিভাবে এঙ্গেজমেন্ট বাড়াতে পারি, প্লাস হচ্ছে ম্যানেজমেন্ট স্টুডিওর নিউ ফিচারগুলো নিয়ে। তো উনি অনেক আগে থেকেই মাইক্রোসফটের বিভিন্ন কমিউনিটিতে কাজ করে থাকেন। তো আমরা আজকে আর দেরি না করে, অলরেডি আমরা 8 মিনিট দেরি করে ফেলছি, তো আমরা আজকে আর দেরি না করে আমরা আজকে সেশনটা শুরু করতে যাচ্ছি। তো স্যার, আপনি যদি শুরু করতেন।
Thank you everyone for joining. As the host said, we'll be talking about performance troubleshooting made easier using the new features in Management Studio. So this is a little bit about me. So I'm not going to talk much about myself, but there are my contacts on the left side, and I'll show you my contacts at the end. So if you want to follow up on anything, you can always contact me using any of this medium. And let's move on. So what I want you to do, because we are all online, we can't see each other, I want you to take your phone out, go to www.menti.com, and then put this code that you see on the screen, 244472, and answer that question that I posed there. And I'll share the result with all of you once you guys respond to that. So you can do it on your browser, or you can also do it on your smartphone. You have 4 options to choose from. The code is 244472. You do not need any login or anything. Once you type in the code, you will see the question. Okay, I see that the answers are coming, so yeah. Okay, so the reason I pose this question, I have very strong opinion myself personally, that unless your company has any restriction or you have any, depend on the version of SQL Server you are using, I have a strong opinion that we should be using the latest version, which is 18.5 at this time. And I'll tell you why. Because up to SQL Server 2016, Management Studio used to be part of SQL Server binary. So if somebody needed Management Studio, they actually had to download the whole binary for SQL Server Engine, and then they were able to install SQL Server Management Studio from there. So what Microsoft realized, that SSMS is a lightweight tool, and there was no reason to integrate that with SQL Server Engine. And what that did is that was holding the team to roll out new features. So finally, when SQL Server 2016 came out, Microsoft took it out of the binary and make it a separate binary. So now today you can just go to Google SSMS download. You even don't need to put your email address, and you should be able to download it. And Microsoft is trying to put a minor release every 4 to 6 weeks, so they can give out new features. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I had another poll, but looks like there's only few people answering, so I'm just going to skip that one too. And so this is a direct quote from someone that I know personally. His name is Pedro Lopez. He's a senior product manager at Microsoft who actually looks after the management studio development. And his mission is over a period of many years, he wants to make ShowPlan the one-stop shop for query performance. So this doesn't mean that we're not going to use DMVs anymore. This doesn't mean that we do not use performance counters, we do not use PSS DAG, we do not use Nexus tools. But what they're trying to say is staying within the management studio and looking at the query plan, we can solve many of the problems that we see with the performance issues. Now, the talk I'm going to give require a certain level of knowledge about ShowPlan. And if you are not familiar with the ShowPlan, then you might have a little bit hard time following my talk. And I have a suggestion for you. If you do not know, search for a book by Grant Fritchie, who is a Microsoft MVP. He works for Redgate. He wrote a book of about 700 pages, totally on execution plan. And that book takes you through from very basic to all the way, to the advanced level of looking at query plans. And if you're not familiar with query plan, and if you don't know how to look up query plan, you will always struggle with query tuning. Because by looking at the query plan only, you know what your query is doing within the SQL Server engine, where it is spending more time, what kind of join it is doing, and how the data is flowing between the different operators. So this is a highlight from that quote, that ShowPlan the one-stop shop for query performance analysis and troubleshooting, and that's what we'll be talking about. So I really do not have many slides today, it's mostly demo, but one question I get very often when I do this talk, because I'll be showing a lot of different features, and people ask me that if I'm running SQL Server 2008, 2012, 16, can I use these features, or these are only for the new SQL Server engine like 2017 or 2019? And oftentimes I cannot remember how back a feature was ported, so I created this list. There are 3 slides with this list, and I spent hours and hours to put that list, reading the release notes. So if you ever ask me this question, can I use this feature from my older version of SQL Server, I will refer you to this slide because I can remember, I'm not that smart. So if you have that question, please go back to this slide and see how far back you can use that feature. If you notice that on the right side of the slides, I said new SSMS required, and I did not put the version of Management Studio because I said at the beginning that I have a very strong opinion that all of us should be using newer version of Management Studio. They're always adding feature. 18.5 just came out. There are a bunch of cool features they added, so there is no reason for you to use an older version of Management Studio. And other nice thing is if you are using the the major version 18, whenever there is a new release, actually you will see a notification on the right side that update is available. You just click it, it downloads automatic, and then you run the installer, and you are up to the latest version. That's it. I do not have any more slides. I'll go to demo, but before I go there, I put a couple of other resources that if you want to go in details in some of the stuff that I've been talking about, these links will take you there, and you can read more about it. So I'm going to switch my screen to my management studio, and okay. Asan, can you see my management studio now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, good. Okay. If everyone can mute, that will be nice. I think somebody's mic is on. There's noise there. Anyway, so before I came online, I ran this script. So I'll share all my scripts with you. It's in GitHub. I'll send a link to the organizers. They can share it with you, so you can download all these scripts. So if you want to follow it along, or if you want to practice later on, you have to run this script first. And I'm not going to run it right now because I put enough comment here that you should be able to follow by yourself. What I basically did, I downloaded a backup of AdventureWorks database, which is given by Microsoft for free for test purpose. I downloaded from GitHub. I installed it, and then I made some bigger tables. And also at the end, I turned on the query store. Query store is a feature that came out in SQL 2016. I'll be showing some of the features from there. So I already ran this, so I'm not going to run this right now. There's another script I put here, and I started doing this since major version 18 came out. It's just a log of the most important features that I think for data professionals, for data, for DBAs and developers. I just made a list. I'm not going to read through this, but if you download the code, you will get this with you, so you can take a look. So this is our first script. This is just a regular, select query, doing a join between two tables. So don't focus on the query. My goal is to show you some of the new features just using this query plan. So SQL Server, whenever you run it in Management Studio, oh, by the way, I'm using SQL Server 2019 CU4, and as you can see here, I'm using the version 18.5 of Management Studio. On SQL Server Management Studio, you can come here and you can see my screen. There is two different plans. One is called an estimated plan, and one is called an actual execution plan. You do not need to run a query if you want to see the estimated execution plan, but if you want to see the actual plan, then you need to run your query. So your query had to run because the actual execution plan will have the runtime statistics, and you can only get it once you run your query. And so let's run this. We're going to turn on this. As we got our result set, and this is our query plan. So on the newer Management Studio, actually, let me make this a little bit bigger. Recently, they added this thing, the completion time. I really don't see a use of this because it's just telling me what time my query finished, but it doesn't tell me how long it ran for. If you want to see how long it took, you really have to come here, and there are other ways to see it that we'll explore. So in version 18.4, Microsoft came up with another switch to turn this off. I don't know even why they added it. So I was not, I was not too thrilled about this one. But when you come to execution plan on the newer Management Studio, now we can come here, go to properties, and you can see that how much time this query took. And the good part is, if you see here, it has two time. One is a CPU time and other one is elapsed time. So the difference between these two is the CPU, this query, it took 1169 milliseconds for the CPU to generate the result set. But for us to see the result, it took almost 3000 milliseconds. So the question is, where did the other time go, right? And other time actually went in waits. So whenever we submit a query into SQL Server Engine, it can be in three different states, right? Once the query plan is generated and it goes for execution, either the query is running on a CPU, or it is waiting for a CPU, or it is waiting for something else. Now, what is that something else? It can be waiting for an IO that I have to read a page from the disk and bring it to the memory, or I need a lock that I'm waiting for someone, or I'm blocked by someone because I need a lock that somebody is holding that lock, and my lock is the lock that I asked for is not compatible, so I have to wait. So this gives you a good indication, right? If someone comes and says that, oh, my query is running slow, and if you see your CPU time and your elapsed time is huge difference, then you can come and look at some of the waits, and we'll talk about waits later on. We did not have this feature before, this query time stats. Previously, if we want to see this on our query, we had to type set statistics query, set statistics time on, and set statistics IO on. Then only we could see these times. But now we do not have to do that anymore. It's actually built in here. The other thing we are always curious as a DBAs or developers is how much IO I am doing, right? So before this new feature, like I said, we had to always type in set statistics IO on, and then we could see all the IOs. But now, if you come to operator, like this one is a cluster index scan, we can right click, we can go to properties, and you can see all kind of IO information for that operator. It's all ready for you. And if you notice one thing, this sign, these two arrows, it means that my query is running parallel. And when I say parallel means I had a piece of work, I had to get it done, and I distributed that work between two threads. I gave it to two different CPUs. And now we can even see per thread. So here I had logical read, total 40. As you can see, thread 0 is your control thread who is distributing the work and collecting the work back. But thread 0 gave the work to thread 1 and thread 2, and thread 1 did 12 and thread 2 did 26. So 12 and 26, these are very small numbers, so we don't need to be worried. But if you're doing thousands and thousands of IOs, and if you see that your workload is not distributed between the threads evenly, then you have a different problem. And then you will see a different wait type. If we want to give an example, right? Say I have 10,000 papers to sort out, and I have 10 people to distribute this. What will happen if I give one person 5,000 paper, and I give the other other people, probably around 500 pages. So all those 9 people will finish their 500 pages a lot earlier than the person who got 5,000. And now all of the CPUs, this 9 other CPU has to wait for that one CPU to finish. Then you have other problem, right? Then you have other queries, they're not going to get CPU. So so these are the things that you can ready-madely see from Management Studio. And my goal of this talk is not to tell you how to solve all this problem, right? Because some of these talks, we can talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes how to solve this. So my goal is to just give you enough ammunition, give you enough tools to see what the problem is when you think a query is not running the way you want. I talked about wait stats here, right? Before this feature came out in Management Studio, it was always a problem for DBAs to capture the wait stats for individual query. it's easy. You can always look at the weight stats for your whole database. And that was also not easy because weights are accumulating. So once you restart your SQL server, the DMVs keep track of weights since the restart. But there's no way for you to know how much only this query was waiting for and what are the weight types. Finally, you could do that with your session ID. You could set up a trace and you could find that. But now you do not have to do any of this. You can just come here and you can see the weight types. It also gives you the weight time. And how many times this weight happens. So this information is ready-made for you. And what Microsoft did, which you will see in another demo, if there are certain weight types that's not useful, like we cannot do anything. For example, if you're running always on availability group, you will always see certain weight type that happen because of data synchronization between the replicas. They will filter those weights and they will not show it to you here, which is another good thing. Another new feature here, number of rows read. This is a new feature and we'll see a demo later on why it's important. So our goal, whenever we are tuning query, our goal should be these two numbers, actual number of rows and number of rows read. Ideally should be same or as close as possible. And why I say that, right? If my result said select 32 rows, and to give you 32 rows, if I have to read 1000 rows, that's a problem, right? Because either I'm not indexed properly, so SQL Server is doing extra reads to give me those number of rows. And imagine if you have a query that's running thousands and thousands of time every minute, and it's doing those extra reads. So you're doing extra I/O, your CPU is taking more time, and you are, your network, you are using more bandwidth than you need to. So this is a good indication for us that we can still tune the query, and I'll show you another demo just on that. But number of rows read, it was not there before. This is a new feature was added recently. Another good thing now, sometime we can save this query plan and send to someone to look at it, right? To your colleagues, to someone else. Hey, do you see any problem? Oftentimes you forget to send the query. So the person who is looking at this has no clue what the query was doing because this used to get truncated. So finally, Microsoft added this button. Now, if you send the query plan, whoever opens it, they can click on this button and the query will open in a new window, which I like a lot. So it's kind of a package. It has nothing to do with performance tuning, but it's a cool feature that I wanted to share if you are sharing your plan with someone else. So I don't know how many of you are using Query Store, but I'll show you a couple of things there. Query Store came out brand new in 2016, and there's been a lot of improvement in last few years. And Query Store is not a server scope, it's per database. So you see that this under Adventure Works, there's a tab called Query Store. And I'm not going to go through all because Query Store itself can be a talk for hours. But I just want to show you this. This is a new feature they added. So now Query Store will track your weight types per database. So I can come here and see this is the biggest weight for this database is the parallelism. Next is network I/O. And I mean, these might not be interesting, but I'm just trying to give you the concept. Now, if you click on this, it actually tells you that which query contributed this weight type. So now you know that this is my weight type, this is my query, this is my plan. So if you see a large weight type in your database, now you have all the information ready for you. You can come and start looking at this query, and and then you can start tuning. So this is a good one. I like. Another feature they added, which people asked for a few times, because Query Store keep different versions of your query plan, right? So if you have a query that's continuously, say, like recompiling or is generating new plan, how many query plan you want to keep? Before we did not had a control on this. So if you have a query that's getting recompiled very frequently, it will be saving thousands and thousands of plan and taking space for nothing, right? Because if I have a query having problem, I'm not going to go back to hundreds of plans. I'll probably look at last 2-3 versions of the query plan and see what changed, right? So now you can configure that. You can come here and say, just keep the last 10, 20, whatever number you choose to. And the other feature I like is before we did not had this. This was very recent. I can decide what queries to keep in my query store, and I can set up different thresholds. So if a query is ran more than 30 times, then only save it. If you run 1 or 2 times, I don't care. But these are all configurable. So I just want you to be aware. You can read more about this, and you can make your own choice. I'll run another query here to show you 3 different things. This is a huge win for us because we've been struggling. A lot of people struggle with this for a long time. So let me show you this, and I'll show you in a different picture of this. This is a new thing, was just added in 18.5. And why it's important? Because a nested loop join, the rows come from the top. For each row, this operation happens. And before 18.5, it would only tell us this, it will only tell us these 2 pieces of information. And it used to tell us that I did this work 16 times. So sometimes people will get confused, because people will look at here, it says that, my estimated number of rows 61, but when I come here, I only see 3.8. Actually, you have to multiply that 16 by 3.8, and that's how you get 62 rows. And what I did here, if you want to read more about this, I put a link here. And if we go here, go to this link, you can read more detail about this. So I'm not going to talk about this, but I put the link so you can follow through. Okay, so let's move to the next demo. I'm sure if you're working with SQL Server for a while, you heard about CX packet. And CX packet is a common wait type if you are running query in parallel. And there are 2 different things happen. So if I'm the control thread, I get all the work, I distribute it to everybody, and now everybody's doing the work. Once they're done, they give me the work back. And as long as that thing happens, the control node has to wait. It has no choice, right? And as a developer or a DBA, you really cannot do anything about the control thread. Control thread has to wait for everybody to get the work done and get the work back and pass it to the next operator. So finally, what Microsoft did is they separated this wait type. They call this CX consumer. So if you see a wait type CX consumer, means that's the control node. You really cannot do anything. And you can try to reduce your CX packet wait type differently. And there are a lot of misinformation about CX packet. So you want to be careful, when you follow that advice. So let me show this in real time. This is another DMV that you want to take a note. I mean, you'll get this query, so you don't need to write this. If you want to grab wait type for a particular session, what you can do, you grab your session ID from here. This is AD. If you plug it in here, now what this will do, this DMV will only give you word types just for session 80. So let's run this. And we'll see that in our query plan. So this one went parallel, right? Now, if we run this, you see there's two word types, CX packet and CX consumer. And CX consumer is a new word type. And as I said, you cannot do anything about this because that's the control thread. And I told you before, if you come here, look at the word types, Microsoft actually filters some of the word types that you cannot do anything. And I can guarantee you, if you expand all this, as you see, we have 10 different word types here, and we only see 7 here. So what Microsoft did, they actually filtered the other 3 word types that we cannot do anything, and I can guarantee that CX consumer is one of those. So if you expand all this, you will not see the CX consumer word because you really cannot do anything about it. So they don't list it here because you cannot tune that. So if your query is running in parallel, you want to track that word type, and you can do it all from here. Now I said CX consumer is a harmless, but there are some edge cases that you want to be careful, and this is one of the example that I put a link here. You can go and read about this. So if you see this phenomena, they talk about this, how what you can do. So I'm going to revert that, and let's move to the next one. So I'm sure some of you are developer, and all of you run probably write functions, right, within T-SQL. And SQL Server Engine actually doesn't deal with function very well because functions are not set based. So what it does, it works row by row. So it will execute a function for each row one at a time. And that's always a problem. And I always struggle with, whenever people will come and say, my query is running slow. And then I see a function in the code. I really have no way to show them that what percentage of the runtime is being consumed by a function. And let me show you this. So I just created a very simple function here. It's nothing fancy, very simple code. And then what I'm doing here, I don't know, if you don't know what is a compatibility level of a database, I'll definitely ask you to read about this, because if you go to cloud in Azure, there is no concept of SQL Server 2016, 17, or 19. It's just one version. The only way you can control your SQL Server behavior is by compatibility level. And Microsoft is pushing heavily even to the vendors to certify their product based on compatibility level. So here, even though I'm running 2019, if I change my compatibility level to 140, I'm actually forcing the engine to behave like 2017. And the reason I did this is because there has been some major improvement with functions in 2019, which I'll show you later. So now, as you can see, I'm calling the function that I just wrote in this T-SQL, right? And let me turn on the execution plan. Now, if someone is looking at the plan, it says cluster index scan took 98% of the cost, and the 2% is here. So it doesn't mention anything about function, right? So I have no way to prove to the developer that this query is slow because of your function. So what Microsoft recently did, which I really like this feature, I can come here, go to properties, and we saw the query time steps before. And now you can see this. This was added recently. Right? I love this because now I can say that my total CPU time is 825 millisecond. Out of this, your function ran for 571. Right? So almost 75% of time was spent on the function. Without this, it was not easy to prove that the query is running slow because the function is being consumed, it's consuming a row by row for all the 121,000 rows. Now, remember this CPU time 825 and the elapsed time is 1565. So just keep that in your mind. I'm going to show you another thing. And you can show this to your boss if you're struggling to upgrade, and if your boss doesn't want to upgrade your SQL Server to 2019. So now I changed the compatibility level to 150, means behave like 2019. And I did not do any change to the code, right? I'm running the exact code, just change the compatibility level. And you see the query plan change totally. And if I now come here, I do not see that UDF time, right? So what happened? And look at the CPU time. It was 800 something or 700 or close to 800, right? Now it dropped to 580 and I didn't change any code. So in 2019, there's a new feature. What the SQL Server engine will try to do, they'll try to inline your function. So they'll take the code of the function and will try to inline it within the T-SQL. So not running it as a function anymore. Now, is it going to happen to all the functions? No, it is not. There are certain restrictions. You can go and read about it. But if you want to know that if my function inlined or not, this is a place to look at. So let's move to the next one. Batch mode on row store. So this is a feature that people has been asking for a while. And if you want to know what's a batch mode, I put a URL here. This gentleman, he's from Portugal. He's a master on column store index. So batch mode was first introduced by Microsoft for column store index. But not everybody's using column store index. So there was some request to put batch mode on row store index, but this will only happen for large tables. And so let me show you a demo on this. So I'm not doing anything else. I'm just doing a count big on this big transaction history table. So it's very simple. I'm doing a free cache just for my demo. And I put a note, please do not do this in production. And again, I'm changing the compatibility level to 140 just to show you the behavior in 2017 to compare to 2019. So if you look at the properties, keep this in mind. The CPU time was 3,417. And if we look at here, the execution mode was row, right? And again, I didn't do anything, same code. I'm only changing the compatibility level to 150, means behave like 2019. And now change from row to batch. Oops, sorry. And you can see here, batch mode on row store used, true. And you remember it was 3,400 millisecond. So you can cut down your query time almost 1/3 between 2017 and 19 without rewriting the code. Now I know the talk is about Management Studio, not about 2019 feature, but I'm trying to use both to show you that these are the things that you do not need to run a trace anymore. A couple of years ago, if I have to show this to my boss, I had to do a few more things, right? I have to capture the runtime stats to show the difference. Now I do not have to do anything. I can do all this in Management Studio. Another good feature is optimizer stats use. So statistics is used heavily by the SQL Server query engine, right? So whenever we submit a query get compiled. But before it get compiled, it has to choose a query plan. And SQL Server actually consider many different query plans, then it choose a good one and it goes with it. So when it's building a query plan, SQL Server is going and looking at statistics, right? So if we have a filter, say like a customer ID, so it goes to stats in the histogram and see how many rows might qualify for that customer ID, right? Based on that, SQL Server decide what type of join. Am I going to do a scan? Am I going to do a seek? A bunch of things. Now stats get old, right? Because you update your stats, then you go do inside update deletes, you add new rows. So as time goes, your stats get stale. So if your query is running longer, compared to your baseline, how do you know that it's due to a bad stats, right? It was not very simple, but now with this new feature, I'll show you. It's very easy to see if it's due to my bad stats, because then I can go and update my stats immediately or more frequently to get a better result. So this is just a setup code. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go explain. These are all self-explanatory. You can read this. So I just wrote a small store proc, just looking at customer status. And it's just giving me a bunch of customer ID with that status code. And now this is my execution plan. Now look at this execution plan. It looks, index sick, and there's nothing wrong, right? If you look at this like that way. But if you come here, look at this. This estimated about 20,000 rows, but actually it only sent 100 rows. Now, is that a problem? Sometimes, yes, it is a problem, because if it estimated a larger number than the actual number, now SQL Server is going to grant it more resources. It's going to give it more memory. It might go parallel. And if you have many of these, what will happen? Because you are granting more memory than it needs, the other queries will suffer from memory allocation. So you will see other queries are waiting for memory, right? Now, why did this happen? Why did it estimate so big a number? The result is right here. Right? So this is a table name. This is a stats. What it is saying is my statistics was last updated at this time. But since I updated my statistics, I also modified 20,000 record. Now, if it was a table with millions or billions of record, this is insignificant. But this table is small, so it tells me that after I updated my stats, I modified so many rows, so it's really not good anymore. And before this feature came out in Management Studio, yeah, you could see the same information by many different ways, right? I show you 3 different ways that I can look at the same information, right? I can see the mod counter here. I can see the modification counter here. So there are other ways, but now I do not have to run all these. I do not have to remember all this. I can just look it up in Management Studio. So now if I go and update stats and I run this again, So now I have actual number and my estimated numbers are same. And I come here. Now you can see that I updated the stats at 522 and there is, I didn't modify any rows after that. So now I have a fresh stats, which is good. And that's how I got the, my estimated number and my real numbers close to the, exact match. Residual predicate. So this is something that DBAs and even developers struggle, sometime if the indexing design is not right. And what I mean by that, so if I have to run a query, I said, give me all the people that live in, say like in Sharapara, right, where my parents live. Give me all the people in Sharapara, their first name starts with K. So think about this, what SQL Server is going to do. If you have this information in a table, it is first going to go to that table, find all the people that lives in Sharapara, and then it will try to find the first name starts with K, right? So it's kind of two phases, right? First I have to find who lives in Sharapara. Secondly, I have to find people's name that starts with K. Now, if I have the right index, I can do it in one go or in one phase. But if I do not have the right indexes, I have to do it twice. And then it is going to take more time, right? So let me show this again. I'm just going to create some index here. So here I'm doing two things. I'm saying give me product ID and quantity from this table where product ID is 880, but the quantity has to be more than 10, right? So if I turn on this plan, you remember I was showing you this feature at the beginning. I said why I like this number of rows red. Now look at this here. What happened? I only got 32 rows back, but the SQL Server engine had to read 920 rows. In this case, it's not a problem, right? Because it's just a small demo table. But imagine in a bigger systems that you guys work with, if you ask for 32 rows and if it's to go and read 920,000 rows, what's going to happen? And if that query is running, a few thousand times every minute, that will be a big problem. Now, why did this happen? Again, by looking at just this query plan, doesn't tell me anything, right? Index SIG, select, pretty good. Actually, what is happening here, if you see this here, you have a SIG predicate here. It did look at one thing. Once that is done, now it's doing the quantity. So it's a two phase. And this is a trace flag. Again, I'm not sure if how many of you are familiar with trace flag. I would not at all advise you to use this in production, trace flags, unless you really know what you're doing. Trace flag should be a last resort. You shouldn't try to use trace flag to fix everything. But this one is a good one to now. With the trace flag, you can see what is happening. Look at this now. Here I'm getting 920 rows. And then I have a filter because now it's filtering for the quantity and taking it down to 32 rows. See, so this filter normally without the trace flag, if you're looking at a query plan, you don't know. You'll think that it's working fine. But the only way you will know is looking at that, the number of rows red and number of rows, sending to the next operator. Now, how do we fix this? You create an index with the both column. And now run this. Come here. So now I got rid of that extra, 890 rows that I was reading. Again, I said, for this query, probably doesn't matter, but if you're, dealing with large systems, looking at this, give you a clear hint that you have room for improvement, right? You can either tune your query or do some index strategy. And again, I said, my goal is not to show you how to solve all these problems. My goal is to show how to find problems just using the Management Studio. I'm not going to run this demo. I'm just going to talk about this in the interest of time. So I think most of you are probably familiar with Profiler. We all use Profiler Trace because we can open the GUI. We can set up the events that we want to capture and we'll run a trace. And Microsoft came up with the extended event trace and they want to retire the Profiler Trace. So people had a lot of reservation, right? People are not using extended event, and one of the reasons people are not using it because we didn't have a profiler, something similar to Profiler. So finally in Management Studio, and now Microsoft came up with the extended event profiler. And now you do not have to do anything. You can just come here and you can launch a session. That's it. Now your extended event trace is running without doing anything. As soon as you run this, actually behind the scene, what happened? It actually creates a session with this name, Quick Session Standard. And you can go and look at the properties. And you can see what are the events it's capturing. So if some of you are not still using extended event and you don't know how to write this, you can start from here. And just so you know, the T-SQL one is a subset of standards. If you're using a standard, you do not need to use T-SQL. One drawback is this trace is not being saved. It's just in memory, which I do not like, right? Because it's continuously scrolling. I cannot save it. I cannot load it into a table. So, but this can give you a good start. So what you can do is you can stop this and you can script it. And there you go. Now you have an extended event trace definition. And now you can modify this whatever you want. And I actually gave 2 examples that I took that and I modified. So one of the modifications I did is I want to save this in my C drive, right? So later on I can play with it. I can load it into my table. I can do whatever I need to. I made another version of this. Here I added some filter on my duration. So all I'm trying to say is if you are not familiar with extended event, this is a good way to start. Start this. It will create a session, script it out, and then start from there. It gives you a baseline. You can add more events. You can drop. You can add filters. You can make get your hands dirty on extended event. So this is a demo that I want to show you. So let me that by staying in Management Studio, and if you know all these features, you can tune a query without using any other tool. And so what I mean by that. So let's run this. It's going to take a while to run, probably about, I don't know, about 30 seconds. And the other feature what Microsoft did, you can actually analyze the execution plan within Management Studio. And I'll show you that. So when you do the analysis, it actually show you, a couple of problems. So we'll look at this. But for the interest of time, let me do one thing. Let me take this and run this in a different window so we can come back and look at this. OK. So you see this sort and you see a small warning sign here, right? In the sort. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that 2,451 pages of this sort operation could not fit in the memory. And we had to write this data into the temp table. So as you know, in memory, we can read write stuff in microseconds. Anytime we go to disk, doesn't matter if you have SSD, we're talking about milliseconds, right? So microseconds versus millisecond. And we will always try to come into a conclusion that people will say, oh, because I didn't have enough memory, right? That's why the sort is spilled to the tempdb. But if you come here and say analyze my execution plan, and look at this. What happened? My estimated number of rows were 1, and actually I qualified for 31 million rows, right? Is that a problem? It's a big problem because my estimate was 1, but actually I ended up with 31 million rows. So when your estimate is 1, SQL Server is not going to grant you much memory. And if someone tells you that because I didn't had enough memory, that's why the sort went to tempdb, you always come here and show them this. So I put a link here. You really want to read about this and understand what this is telling you. If you're a DBA or a developer, you're trying to troubleshoot and understand how the memory get allocated, how the memory get used, you want to know this. So if you look at this, just this line, right? And look at this desired memory. Because my estimated number of row was only 1, I only wanted 544, but SQL Server was kind enough. It gave me actually almost double than what I asked for. But what this is telling me that if you would have asked me, I could have given you this much memory. So it's really because not short of memory, is because my estimate was way off. So now this took 20 seconds. And if you look at my next one, it took 14 seconds. So I rewrote this query, and I'm not going to go through how I rewrote. Some of you are probably good developers than me because I mostly do like operational DBA stuff. But now if you come here, we still have a sort warning, but look at that, our page number reduced from 2,400 to only 26 pages. And so let me run the last query in a window so we can save some time. I'll keep talking, but just let me get this going. So I'll make another, another round of improvement. So we are down from 20 seconds to 14 seconds. Yeah, we're looking at this one, right? So now let's analyze this one. Look at our estimate now, right? Our estimate here is 9 million. And still our actual is 31 million. So this time we got a little bit more memory than what we got last time. And we can see that by coming here. Look at that. Last time it only asked for 514 or something. This time it asked for, 5,000. So what I'm trying to say is, do not make a choice or do not make a conclusion that, oh, I'm out of memory. Actually, no, it's not because out of memory, it's because if your estimations are wrong. And why your estimations are wrong, that's a whole talk about cardinality estimation. We can talk about that some other time. It itself can be a whole talk. And now I rewrote this query one more time and we come here. So we went down from 20 to 14 seconds. And this time the query took 2 seconds, right? And I got rid of that sort totally. And we didn't need that much memory because we do not have a sort operation here. But look at that. Our estimate is 30 million. Our actual is, it's close to a 30.9 and it's 31 million. So again, as you saw that I did not get out of Management Studio. I did not use the trace. I did not use any DMV. I did not run any profiler trace, nothing. Just by staying in Management Studio, if we know where to look for, we can tune queries. And that's the message I'm trying to give. So I'm going to speed up, and I'm talking for more than an hour. This is a feature that I just want you to be aware. So again, I'm just creating a store procedure here. I'm not, this code has enough comment. You can read it by yourself. So I'm running this, calling that with a different parameter, and turn on plan. So I got a plan. So sometimes people will come to you that, hey, I was running this query. It's performing good all morning. Suddenly this afternoon, it's running longer, right? What changed? And if you ask them, hey, did your code change? Did you guys do a release? Did you modify? Oftentimes they will say no. And you want to ask them, what parameters they're running with. Every time someone comes to me, I'm going to tell them, give me some examples. What parameter you were running this afternoon and what you were running in this morning. So as you can see here, I was running with the date time of June 15, right? Now I saved this plan. So let's override. I saved it before I was testing this code. And now I'm running with this. And as you can see, it looks like it's running a little bit longer. So someone came and says now it's running longer, right? So now I can compare this plan with the plan that it was running fine. But look at this. If you're just looking at the two plan, it looks pretty same, right? The shape is same, 29%. You will say, it's running fine, no difference, go back. There's nothing wrong. But look at the properties. Did I? Let me look at one thing. Maybe I'm close this. Query time stats parameter list 26. Okay, nice. Okay, now I got this. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. So now look at this. So you can easily show them that why your query is running longer, because before you were getting 1173 rows, now you are getting 113,000 rows. And the other thing, look at this. When I ran the query first time, my compile value was June 15 and my runtime value was June 15, right? Then that plan got cached, and every time someone is going to call the same store proc with a different parameter, doesn't matter. It's not going to recompile. SQL Server caches plan, so it doesn't have to recompile every time to save you time. Now what happened is, next time it ran, I called it with this, but it still has the old value it got compiled with, right? So that is why it's running longer. Now, how to solve this? This is something called parameter sniffing. We can talk about that again for hours, but a quick fix can be if I recompile and now I run this. Now my compile value and my runtime value is same. So again, you can always, you can compare plans, you can look at the shape, you can look at all the matrices between the two execution plan within the management studio if you know this compare feature. Search show plan. So if you're really doing some deep dive, troubleshooting, read this blog post. There's a new feature in extended event trace. They call this query thread profile. What it can do in an execution plan, it can actually get more stats for each operator. And then you can see that which operator was taking more time. And you can deep dive into that operator. And one more thing that I did not mention, this is also pretty new. Actually, let me run this one. So I gave you a extended event trace definition. Let me put this here. So you're just creating a definition. We'll come here. We'll see that. And I named this perfstats XC. We can run this and we can watch the live data, but it's also saving my my trace. Now, if I run this query, look at this query plan. Huge, right? How do I know that which operator is taking more time? Where is my problem? Now, one place you can see each operator, this is also new. It says that how much time it is spent on each of these operators, right? Also, it gives you two different numbers. One is the estimated number and one is actual number, right? If you hover here, look at the actual number of rows is 19,972 and the estimates are 17,974, right? And those numbers, even without hovering, now it shows you here. Now, let me stop this trace. This is a nice feature. So now I have this trace. So let's look at the estimated numbers, right? You see the highest number is 19,972. Now, if I want to find out which of the operator belongs to this line, what I have to go to each one and look at, who has 19,972, right? But imagine of a plan like this, how difficult that will be for me. But so what Microsoft did, now you can do a Control F and it will give you this search. And if I come here, I say estimated rows red, and what I was looking for 19,972. You can plug this in here. Enter. Sorry. It tells me that this is the operator that has this. Next, this. So what I'm trying to say is you can come here. You can say, who took the most CPU. You can take this value, come here and search and see which operator consumed most CPU or that number of CPU, and then you can start tuning that part. I'm going to skip number 12. I'm just going to talk about number 13. So this is a couple of dashboards. I just want to make you aware if you're not. I'm sure you have probably heard about GDPR. If you guys are working with any company in Europe, GDPR came into into force. Even in US, there are different states having different laws. So it's a challenge for people to identify your your data classification, right? Which data is classified, which is not, what kind of classification is all this. So Microsoft, this is not a perfect tool yet, but I just want to make sure that actually, without doing anything, you can come here, data discovery and classification, and you can just do this, classify your data. It went through, looked at it, it makes some guesses, and actually I ran this before, so it's going to show this, save, and it generates a nice report of all my, these are the tables that I have classified data, the table name, column name, what kind, and the sensitivity level. So you can just print this and send it to your boss, or send this to the architect who is designing this. You can add your own classification based on the country that you are working on. If they have certain requirements on certain type of data, you can do that. I just wanted to make you aware of this. Another, I don't know if you know about this performance dashboard. This was there for a long time. So let me actually let me start something else to show you. Just give me a minute. I'm just going to start a workload to show you a few things. Okay. I hope those are running. Yeah, these are running. Okay, good. Okay, so if we shut this down, it should. One thing I want you to be careful. If a bunch of people are working in your team, make sure that not everybody open these dashboards. Some of these are can consume a lot of resources. So a lot of things we talked about, like weights, IO stats. People want to know, if my CPU is high, what are my expensive queries, right? And you can get all this by T-SQL, but I just want to show you this. These are all done for you in this dashboard, right? So you can come and say, I have one trace running. I have 7 databases here. I can click on this. I can go to different reports. Now I can see all my database name, see all the sizes, right? I can go back. I can see my missing indexes, my cache erase. So a lot of good information here that I want you to be aware. Other thing that I like here is this is a new report. Sorry, this is what is that? Activity monitor. Again, this consumes a lot of CPU. So make sure, if you have a large team, not everybody open this. And what I like here, if someone come and say, hey, I started this query, it's still running. What's going on? Can you take a look? You come here, you look at your expensive queries, then what is the session ID, and what kind of what database is running and what kind of resource is consuming. So as you can see, I have now 4 expensive queries because what I did, I started all this, behind the scene. And if you see, if I kill all this, right? And now if we go back, you see nothing, right? And if I go there, I start these clients. Very soon you should see all those four queries will show up here as you can see here, right? And there are a bunch of other, you can see like file IO stats, your resource weights, a lot of information here. But again, be careful. If you have a bunch of people in your team, you do not want everybody to start using this. So that's all I have. So let's go back to the slides. Yeah, so I talked about this. You can read, these all take you to a different articles. These are again my contacts. If you want to reach out to me, questions, comments, anything, you can contact me. So I'll take questions as long as we need. I know we have another speaker waiting, so I want to be respectful of their time. And I want to thank you for joining. So I'll let the organizers read the questions if there are any, and then I'm just going to be you answering those.
So thank you very much, Toyib Bhai, for presenting us such a great presentation. I hope everyone who already joined this session already covered and understand whole the scenario what we are trying to provide them. Actually, right now what I am seeing in here, I didn't get any question from audience. So the thing is, I noticed here is available 38 person who already watching this, and I also host this event in our Facebook page as well. So I think the presentation was very fantastic and more clear to ours and all audience as well. So that's why maybe I didn't get any question. So
Does the audience
thanks
know
to
how to ask question? Do they know if there is
as
any chat room they can send questions, or?
yeah, actually here is if we hover our mouse and we'll find that Q&A option.
Okay.
There is a there is a Q&A option, and I already published. Here is only one is 17 anonymous who is attend from Teams event, and we have Facebook live events. There was 38% as well, but right now I didn't get
Okay.
any questionnaire from Facebook and the Teams as well. Maybe if we publish this event to YouTube, maybe we can gather some question from there. Right now we don't have any, so thank you very much, Toyib Bhai, for presenting this, and I am going to hand it over to our organizer, Asan Bhai. Can you please, Asan Bhai, can you please add something here?
Thank you very much, Toyo for your nice presentation. Hopefully, in next coming time, we will arrange few more sessions on performance tuning and optimization.
Asan bhai, I am interrupting one more because of I saw Mehdi bhai has one question. We can give the chance to him to ask the question.
Yeah, sure.
Mehdi bhai, please ask your question.
Hello, I have a question basically. So bhai, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, so bhai, thanks for your nice presentation basically. Everything was sometimes it goes beyond my head. So I am interested about to read more about this. So you presented some resources in last slides. So can you share those in publicly so that we can go through and come back to your video also to have more understanding on this?
Yes, so I will upload all this slide and the code, and Asan Bhai will get the link, and Asan Bhai will publish this in the event page probably by end of today. I mean, it's already afternoon in Dhaka, so by tomorrow morning you will get the link in the page, and from that link you can download all my code, all my slides, use it, share it, whatever you need. This is nothing, I'm okay with it. You don't need my permission to use it or share it with others.
Okay, thank you very much.
You, Thank you, Turbay, for your presentation. If there is no other question coming from audience, then we can wrap up the session. Can we?
Yeah, Hassan bhai, I want to add something. Hello, can I?
Sure.
Yeah, hello, Toyeb bhai, it's me, Gulam Rabbi. I am introduced with you before couple of years in the year 2016, and
Yes,
since
I recognize your name. Yes.
I'm a fan of you. Actually, I'm surprised how a man can have so deep in SQL. Actually, Hassan, but today we have learned a lot of new things, and basically we have seen the measurement and how query performance measurement and the advanced execution plan. May I request, Bhai, would you please give us a presentation on basically how to design a proper database for good performance and some deep formula about query writing, so that we can have best performance of a query and of a database.
These are very vast subjects, right? What you're talking about, these are not really not good for a, these are probably a day-long workshops, that you guys should think about. One thing I can do is a talk that I was talking to Hassan the other day, is to look at NT patterns in the query, right? That what kind of things, if we see in a query, it's not always bad, but we that our we should be careful, right? We should be alerted. So because there are about 5 or 6 things. There's a trend, right? If you see this kind 5 or 6 things in a query or in execution plan, most likely there is a problem. But is it a problem all the time? Probably no, but 90% time there is a problem. So if you know those, and if you know how to solve those, you'll probably solve most of the problems, not 100%. Right? To to make it short, not to start another talk, because I know we have a second speaker. If you see a nested loop join for 2 million rows, that's a problem. Now, why that's a problem? Because now you need to know how nested loop join works, and if you then you will know that, okay, if I'm doing a nested loop join on 2 million rows, I have a problem. So we can we can probably do a session on how to what are those patterns that we should look for, right? Probably 5 or 6 patterns. We can talk about 10 minutes for each. Probably a good hour, hour 15-minute talk. So, and I don't have that ready, but I can make it ready, and so I'll keep that in mind, and I'll work with Hassan.
Thanks.
And I also request you to send these suggestions to the organizers, and they can sort out there, because there are other smart people than me. Like if you really want to know about T-SQL, I can bring other resources. I already talked to Hassan Bhai, who has a lot deeper knowledge, like they do development day in, day out. They would be in they will be in a better position than me to teach you guys, because I'm mostly operational DBA. So I do not write, I do not develop day in, day out. So, but I can bring in other resources who can really give you better knowledge than me. So I want to make sure. So if Hassan Bhai has the topics, if all of you send it to him, I can work with Hassan Bhai to bring other speakers, because it's at one point you will get sick of me listening to me every time. And like I said, there are smarter people than me. I can help to bring them to do some sessions.
Thank you so much. I was asking for those actually. But
yeah, okay. Okay, so I'll go on mute. I'll go on mute if there's no other question, because I know we have a, we'll let the other speaker start his session. Hassan Bhai, good?
Hello. Hassan Bhai, hello. Probably a technical problem. Hassan Bhai, hello. Nakib Bhai, hello. Hello.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
Azad bhai, yeah, I can hear. Asan bhai is there?
Yeah, I can hear you all. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Maybe there is a bad network quality we found in server. For this reason, we can't hear Hassan bhai. Nakib, you can start second one. Hello,
Hello.
Nakib.
Hello, Azad bhai.
Yeah, you can
Azad
start
bhai,
second one.
the second
No?
second session's speaker is Rashidul Alam, right?
Right, Rashidullah.
Mr. Rashidul Alam, as I have been informed that Mr. Rashidul Alam is busy with his personal problem. Actually, it's a good news that very recently, at 2:30 p.m., he has been a father of daughter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, good.
So it's
That's
totally
yes.
impossible for me, as I can think, for him to join.
Okay, then we can close for today. Okay, you can.
Yeah, I think we can close for today right now. So
Okay,
and we can plan for a next session if possible in the next month or coming week.
okay. Give the closing note and close for today.
Okay, thank you very much, and thanks all for joining today's session. And hopefully we'll come back again. And please keep in touch and give us your feedback as well, what we can present and what you are expecting from our side, and how we can improve ourselves as well. So it's a very interactive session, and so hope we can see in the coming month, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Akib bhai, probably this session has been recorded.
Yep.
Yeah. So we are going to get this soon, right?
Yeah. Obviously, we will share the recorded session to our YouTube channel, and everyone can access there. And if someone miss and or attend from the very last time on the middle of the session, they can easily join and watch the whole session from our YouTube channel. So I think that there would be no issue.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear you now.
right now we heard you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
Asan
we
bhai,
can hear you.
we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone, for joining with the session. And in coming days, we have talked with Toyo Bhai and others speakers about the next plan, and that will be shared with you. And the video of today's session has recorded, and we'll share it with YouTube channel that Nakib has informed. Thank you very much, everyone. We are going to start the session.